Hello, you're listening to the Saluki Gamescast. We're back. We had a week off for Friday the 13th, right? Like, we have to take that off. It's a holiday. It's a religious holiday.
We already talked about all the cannibals the time before. We had to give them their chance to just do their thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Friday the 13th is the time of cannibals, as we all are aware. And I will say, right before we went on, I said no discussion of cannibals, and immediately the first thing Alicia says is cannibals. This is episode 58 for October 20th, 2023. My name is Justin Young. Joining me, as always, are Alicia Utecht, Mario Sanders, and OJ Duncan. Actually, this is the first time we've been all together for, 3 weeks?
I'll say it's been a hot minute.
Mm-hmm. Like Mario was gone, and so happy to have Mario back and everything. So how's everyone been doing?
Yeah, I'm
very excited.
I guess I'll talk. Yeah, I'm doing okay. I went away for that weekend, went to Seattle, went to a concert, saw some friends, so it was nice to get out of town for a little bit.
Who'd you see in concert?
It was the 20th anniversary tour for Death Cab for Cuties, Transatlanticism, and the Postal Service's Give Up. Mm-hmm. Those two bands have the same singer. And so they did a sort of joint tour together, and I think the closest they were going to be here was Chicago, but it was sort of an awkward time, and I've got good friends in Seattle, so it just made sense to get away for the weekend.
All right. Well, I mean, that's a long getaway for the weekend. Yeah. It's a pretty far one. That's cool. I went to a concert on Friday the 13th as well. Actually, on the 12th, I went to see two cover bands that were playing together. One that was a Kiss cover band and one that was a Van Halen cover band.
Nice.
But only the early Van Halen, later stuff. And so the Van Halen cover band was actually pretty good. And the Kiss cover band was, you could tell they had been doing this for a while. They had kind of aged into being very similar to present day Kiss, let's say. And so they were fine, but, not spectacular. But then on Friday the 13th, most appropriate concert I could go to, I went to see Alice Cooper.
That is very
nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very appropriate. Alice Cooper, of course, also did the song for Friday the 13th, Part 6, The Man Behind the Mask. So seeing him on Friday the 13th just made a whole lot of sense. And
please tell me he played that song.
He did not, which was I was extremely disappointed that song did not get played. However, I guess I could say that he probably never plays that song. So
that's fair.
The band learning that song just to play it on one tour date maybe didn't make a whole lot of sense. And I sort of doubt Alice Cooper remembers the lyrics to that song at this point. I will say though that Alice Cooper, my brother and I, when we were walking out, we both had this sort of same reaction that we went to a Broadway show and an Alice Cooper concert broke out. It is the most theatrical concert I've ever been to. He's got giant puppets on stage. He's got, he's got these projector screens behind him and they're interacting with them and everything. It is a really weird production. It's a very good production, and it's the sort of show that I kind of feel like if you sort of like rock music, you would actually really enjoy it just because he puts on such a big, elaborate show. Mm-hmm. We were even seeing this in a fairly small theater, so it wasn't like he's just doing this in arenas or something. But it ended up being a fun show to see and everything. And, of course, your mileage will vary based on how much you like Alice Cooper. I will say I am not a huge Alice Cooper fan, but it was fun to get to see him once in concert.
Yeah, that's cool.
So anything else anybody has going on?
I was out in not Arizona. I keep wanting to say Arizona. Arkansas. I was out in the Arkansas mountains last weekend for a performance festival. So that was really cool. It was really nice to just get out there and disconnect from everything for a while. Mm-hmm. And it was really nice because there was a group of us who went from SIU, and a lot of other schools were there, like University of North Texas, Houston, Louisiana State, all of them. And I was the only person from SIU who it was my first time going to the festival, so everyone else was like getting to reconnect with their undergrad professors and their people who they went to grad school with 20 years ago. So it was really nice to be out there and do that.
And do I have this right that you all did a performance of Johnny and Rebecca's show?
Yes. So Johnny and Rebecca each directed a 10-ish minute segment. Craig was supposed to direct a third one, but he ended up not being able to. So the piece is titled "To Move Mountains" because that was the original theme of the performance festival. And so we did that on Friday, and thank God we were first, because then we got to just relax and enjoy everybody else performing instead of being stressed the whole time. But then we're doing it here at home tomorrow night at 8 p.m.
Cool. And that's a free show.
It's free. It's less than half an hour.
That's my kind of show. I like shows that are... As I always tell students, like, nobody ever complains that something's too short, but they will complain if it's too long. So, I'm a little bit kidding there because, like, none of those shows are ever, like, really super long. But I do always like most media to be on the shorter side than the longer side.
Yeah, I think our longer shows run like 2 hours, but if it ever hits that, we always have an intermission. Like, we know it shouldn't be that long.
All right. Well, glad to have everyone back and everything. And obviously, as we're getting geared up for Halloween around here, that's pretty exciting. But we're just going to jump straight into what we've been playing. And Alicia, why don't we start with you? What have you been playing?
So I haven't had a ton of gaming time because last week I was trying to get everything done before going to the mountains, and now this week I'm trying to get everything done catching up after. But I did play a little bit more, and I forget if I talked about this one. I think I started it after the last podcast episode. So I started the Sonic Frontiers DLC.
Okay. No, I don't think you've talked about it on the show.
Yeah. I was like, did I talk about it with my sister or did I talk about it on the show? I think I talked about it with my sister.
Which is difficult because your sister has been on the show, so you might actually confuse it.
And she was on the show talking about Sonic Frontiers when she was. So, but no, so I've probably played for all of like half an hour, so I'm still very much just kind of stumbling around because they wipe the map. You have to redo all that, so that's fun. But
wait, they wipe like all progress?
So what it is, and I do think this is really cool. So what it is in the game, right before the final boss, Amy and Knuckles and Tails have been like trapped in the digital realm this whole time, and Sonic has been slowly being degraded into the digital realm this whole time. So right near before you go to the final boss, Amy and Tails and Knuckles kind of have to, because the whole time Sonic's trying to get them out, but he's degrading faster than he's getting them out. So they kind of give back all of the energy that he was giving them. Mm-hmm. So the DLC starts from this point, right before the final boss. And instead, it splits off to Sonic's degrading too fast. You can't really, you can't get him to a point where he'll be able to do anything. So instead, Sage figures out a way to restore that power that Amy and Knuckles and Tails gave him back to them. So now they have to go and get the last Chaos Emeralds.
Oh, okay. So the DLC is you playing as Amy and Tails and Knuckles?
Right. Okay. Yeah. And I think that's really awesome to have it split off in a what if instead of just being like, hey, here's another extra thing after. Mm-hmm. I love what ifs in fan fiction, and so having it in an official game is really fun. I will say I'm trying to remember the controls and trying to readjust to how Amy's controls are different from Sonic's. But I'm excited. And everything I've heard is that playing it as these characters and having their separate missions is way harder than Sonic's. So everybody's like, if you don't want to like bang your head against the wall too much, just switch to easy mode. But I'm like, I'm already on easy mode, so I just have to remember what I'm doing.
All right. That is an interesting way to approach DLC. I think DLC in a story-driven game is always really challenging because do you add it as like an epilogue or do you try to force it back into the main narrative? And if you do that, like how does the person get in and play the game? So there's been situations before where I've gotten DLC and started up the game and I was like, I don't know how to access this DLC. Like, where is it in the game?
True.
You know? And so I think the way you're talking about it is, okay, well, let's take the ending and let's kind of split it off. Let's do, I think you described it as a what if, but recently we would describe it as a multiverse.
I think the official title is Another Universe.
Yeah.
Like you have to where it spits you out after you beat the game. It you go to the left and there's a portal and it's a whole nother set of save files. Like you can't save this over your normal save file. So it's very clear, which is really nice.
Yeah, that is a smart way to handle it. Good for them.
So they're setting it up like Ocarina of Time, like set up as the Zelda games to have the 3 different timelines.
Hedgehog Historica. I don't think there is a Sonic timeline, is there?
Yeah. I mean, we could get into 06 resetting its own timeline, but yeah, I'm really hoping I'm gonna try to get stuff done for school this weekend, but I'm hoping that I have more time to play it because next weekend I'm going to Chicago with my sister and we're going to the Sonic Symphony concert, and so they're going to play songs from Frontiers. So I'm like, I'd like to get through them in the game before I hear them live.
Yeah.
But we'll see if I manage that.
I saw that that in Chicago, a theater up there is putting on Emmett Otter's Jug Band as a musical show.
What?
And they've got like these elaborate costumes and puppets that they're using. It looked amazing.
Okay, I'm going to have to look that up.
Yeah, because I was like tempted just to go to Chicago to see it. And I know a lot of people haven't seen Emmett Otter, but it's it's done by Jim Henson. So it's Muppets and everything. All right, Alicia, is that everything for you?
That's been it. I've not had a ton of time.
Okay, that's fine. Mario, how about you? What have you been playing?
Yeah, I've actually played a lot over the past couple of weeks. I think the 4 games that I've started and beaten, mostly for that Friends event that has wrapped up, were We Love Katamari, which is the sequel to Katamari Damacy, Wario Land 3, Super Mario World, and Pinocchio for the Super Nintendo. So
I've never played Pinocchio, so that's kind of interesting.
yeah, Lies of P is actually a sequel, if you didn't know. It's fine. There are 2 levels in it that really bring it down, in my opinion. They're 2 auto-scroller levels that I don't know what sort of omega brain you have to have to be able to process the information that's coming at you.
It's like Battletoads.
Yeah. And I think it's just like one of those things. It's a game of that era where it just doesn't signpost things very well sometimes, especially in the auto scroller. Because as you're going through, so one of them is like a Donkey Kong Country style, like minecart roller coaster.
Okay.
And you have to duck and jump. And there is technically a sign that says duck and jump before those things, but they go by in a split second. Unless you're pause buffering, I don't know how you would process that information that fast. And it's unfortunate because there's no damage. When you take that hit, you die. And so it was one of those things where it was thankfully the game is really generous with 1-ups and continues that you can collect throughout the game. But it got to a point where it's just like, okay, first run, oh, there's a duck. I got to, and then you go through like, all right, I know a duck here. Oh, there's a jump that I didn't, So it was just like each attempt getting just like slightly further so that you know what to do. And it was for like both of those. So that was the first one. And then the second one is similar. You and Geppetto are paddling away from Monstro. It's the final like level section of the game. And same thing, you're like jumping over like the reefs and it's just brutal.
That used to be a really popular game design of just forcing you to memorize a level.
Yeah.
And like, I think you're right. Like, that's something that we've moved away from in games for the most part. You don't see it happen too often anymore. And thank goodness, because man, what a pain.
Yeah. Apparently a friend was saying that on the Genesis version, it puts like an arrow, at least for that last one. It has an arrow pointing either up or down, whether you need to jump or duck. But I was wondering, I was like, I don't know how useful that would even be, because they were like back to back to back to back. It's like you're jumping and then like as soon as you land, you need to like immediately duck. So I don't, like I said, I don't know how useful it would be. I think there were some of us that probably took like as long on that level as we did for the rest of the game.
Wow.
You'd have to go by at DDR speed.
It was, like I said, otherwise the game was pretty fine. I haven't played the other like Disney games from that era. I never played like Lion King or Aladdin. I did play Pocahontas on the Genesis, which was really good, but
Aladdin's a really good game, I think.
But yeah, like otherwise the game was pretty fine. Like I said, I think there are other things where it doesn't really tell you what you need to do very well. But that's games do that sometimes. And
particularly games of that era.
Yeah. And I can, and I think, anyways, it was a fine game outside of those two levels.
All right. And the other ones that you played, what do you think of those?
Yeah, they were good. I didn't like We Love Katamari as much as Damacy. It's another Katamari game, so it's very good. I don't think the music is quite as good. And maybe it's just like it's a lot of the same, which isn't a bad thing, because the same is very good. But I didn't like it quite as much. Wario Land 3, I think if it weren't for this event where it was just like, kind of get through and finish the game was the goal, I think if you were playing that game slowly and casually, that game would be a lot of fun, because there's so much to do in that game. If you've never played it, each level has 4 different chests to collect, and some of them are required to beat the game, and others are additional, optional, I guess you could say. They either unlock different things, but things that aren't necessary to the game. And so I think if you were going through casually, it would be a better experience than just like, okay, well, I just need to like find the right things to do. But otherwise, I think it's a pretty solid game. I understand why people like it so much.
Is this the Game Boy Advanced one?
Color.
Okay,
Wario Land 4 is the Game Boy Advance one. I grew up playing that one a lot. I had never played 3, but it's on the Switch Online for Game Boy Color, so I think it's one that, like I said, I think is worth checking out. And then Super Mario World, I'm sure I had played it before, like as a little kid, but that's not a game. This is the first time I would say I really played through it and beat it. I think because of that, same thing, like it's a game of its era, so I don't have that same nostalgia for it, but I will say, like, I think it's visually beautiful. I think it is really impressive with like all of the like branching paths that it has, I sort of, same thing, just went through like the direct path to the end. But it's one that I would go back to and consider doing like all 96 exits on. I'm not the biggest 2D Mario fan. I prefer the 3D Marios, but yeah.
That sounds really interesting. Like, I mean, going back and playing a lot of those games is always kind of interesting, because there's a lot of those. Like when I was a kid, I never played because, first off, I bought very few games because I was a kid. I had no money.
Yeah.
Mood.
And then, the games I did play were games I rented for the most part. And And a lot of times there were games like Pinocchio, for example, that at that age I would have looked at it and went, "Oh, that's a little kid's game. I don't want to play that," because I was real cool and like 13 or whatever I was. But I just would have, it would have appealed to me a great deal. And a lot of times you go back and you play those games now and you're like, wow, this is actually kind of an amazing game. This is really interesting. Or this game, I understand why people don't talk about it. Sure. It's so much of its time. It doesn't transcend, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting to, both of those as being like 2D SNES platformers. I think I'm not the biggest 2D platformer fan. Celeste is like the one big exception. I think of the SNES ones I've played, I would probably take the Donkey Kong Countries certainly over Pinocchio, but probably over SMW as well. But I think that it's a genre that, I don't know, I guess you don't see a ton anymore, and maybe that's just because 3D graphics have become sort of the common thing.
Well, we're going to talk about two that came out just this week.
Yeah, that is true.
But generally, you're right. Yeah, it's not nearly as popular.
But yeah, that's what I've played.
All right, OJ, what have you been playing?
So I haven't really had a lot of time and ability to play games. But a couple things I want to talk about that I've been doing is so the New York Times, they have the app that has like Wordle and other games on it. They had another game that popped up a couple months ago called Connections, which I really like. So it's a once daily thing like Wordle, and so there's a box with 16 words in it, and you have to find there's 4 sets of 4 in there that are connected somehow. And you have to figure out how they are. And sometimes it's easy, like it'll be like movie title, like one word movie titles or something. But then sometimes it's like these words have this similar, like, I don't want to say prefix, but like a word before them, like flash forward, flash flood, something like that.
Oh yeah.
And then some of them is like. There's some weird random connection that like I've never thought of or I never knew, because some of them are like specific items in this book that is talked about and stuff. Like if I've never read the book, then I don't know.
Almost like crossword level of puzzles.
Yeah. And so I really, really am enjoying it. So like as soon as it hits midnight and the new one's up, I'm playing it. And along with that, I've been doing Wordle just because it's right next to it too. Because I did Wordle for a while and then I just stopped.
Like everyone.
Yeah.
I want to say Connections comes from like a British game show. Because I've got a friend who's he does a lot of different like trivia leagues, and that's a popular format, or they use that same format. And so, we've done it before, but yeah, Connections is a lot of fun. I realized that New York Times had its own thing.
Yeah, and it's free, so it's worth getting the app because you can do the free ones. You can't do the crosswords, but you can do some of the other free games. But yeah, I'm really, really enjoying that. I don't win all the time. Like I'm pretty good at Wordle. I'm pretty good at a lot of games. I'm not super good at Connections. So you get 3 chances to mess up and then it's done. But really enjoying it, even though I'm not making it all the time. But if like there's one that you don't know, but you know the 3 other ones, you can do the other 3 and then all that's left is the new one. So. Or the one that you don't know. Another game, I think I talked about this before, Super Snail, which is you're a mutant snail, and you were sent back in time to stop the rise of some demon gods. And so you're updating your shell, and then eventually you get different forms. So there's like the regular form, but then there's a zombie form, there's a mecha form, there's a demon form, an angel form, and a dragon form, which I'm not to the dragon form yet. The other 4 unlocked pretty quickly, and then the dragon one is pretty far along in it. And then it's like a cheeky little satirical type thing. And so even though you're in the far future, you go back to a future from now, and it has different areas. And the areas are based off of real places, but the things are all changed and different, and it's cheeky. Like so. there's a let's see. So one of them is like the United States and it's America, but it's just called Murica, right? And so there's different parts as you're exploring. There's different little parts of the like the country or whatever, and then there's like a battle between the North and the South in Murica, but the battle is between essentially Marvel superheroes versus DC superheroes. And it's like the Joker is like full circus. And I mean, it's the Joker, but and then like, what is it? Man Spider, stuff like that. Right. And then there's a bunch of just little like jokes all over the place in it. And you, once a day, every time you get back from exploring, a hitman is coming that the demon god sent to take you out. And then so you get one chance a day to kill them. The first time they show up in the first one, you just knock down really easily. But then like you intercept them as they're trying to run away. And then they're like, oh, I hid my weakness. Oh, I got stronger. Oh, I'm calling on this. And then they just get like super strong. And then it takes a little while to beat them up because you can only go 20 rounds. So if you can't do enough damage, then you lose, or if they take all your hit points away, you lose.
Sorry to jump in here real quick, but like, what kind of game is this?
It's weird. It's a little bit of its own like genre type thing.
I mean, this is a phone game.
Oh yeah, sorry.
And like, how are you playing? Is it more like a role playing game that you're interacting with it, or?
Well, no. So in the exploration, like you tap on a map and the snail is automatically going. And a big part of the game is speed ups. And you get free speed ups all the time. So it's not like you have to buy and pay for them. Okay. Right. But like, it'll be like, oh, it'll take 11 hours to explore America, but then you can fast forward through it. And then at the end, there's a set of bosses on each of them, that you have to kill. And in order to like really fully beat an area, you have to dominate them, which is kill them in 2 rounds essentially. But the battle is all by itself. You don't do anything in the battle. You're mostly building up, working on stats so that the automatic battling.
So it's sort of a clicker game, it sounds like.
Kind of. I would say next generation of clicker because I'm not really clicking much. I'm just tapping a lot, like on different things, but not tapping to get them to go. And then you like unlock allies after you beat them. There's a mail system, which people send you mail and they're like, I'm going to come kill you. And then like 5 minutes later they show up to kill you. And then like you can either kill them or if you lose, it says the plot armor protects you. And then like the next day you can have them come again. And there's just a bunch of little games inside of it that you can play, including specifically there's a computer that so the area that you're in was like you're like the 1,000th snail that has been sent back, and every other one has failed. But there's like this, you're in the layer essentially of where all the other snails were, and there's an old computer there, and you unlock little mini games in it that are some of them are kind of fun, some of them are kind of tedious, and you kind of have to see it to know what it's about. But it's fun. You can spend money, but if you're spending money, it's not a huge, gigantic jump. Like it'll speed some stuff up, and they have sales all the time. And then they have a specific amount of ads that you can watch per day, and you get something for each ad. And then there's a thing that pops up eventually that says, you're not going to get anything for this, but just watch this ad anyway. You can watch it up to 300 times, and you can do it five times per day. Once you get to 300, it just disappears. You don't get anything. Like I did it because I wanted to support the developers, and I don't have a lot of money to spend on a game. But like it's just funny. There's so much in the game. I think it's worth picking it up and trying it. Also, another game that I picked up, I saw in the Google Play Store and bought it. It's called Magic Research. And it was like $2.99 or $3.99 or something. It was cheap. But it's more like a clicker type game, like a incremental building type thing. And it's all text based, but it's really fun. I'm really enjoying it. And so essentially you're a headmaster of a wizard school that you come across like the old ruins of a wizard school. and then you decide, oh, hey, I'm going to start a wizard school here. And then a researcher comes up and you meet them, and then they start doing research, and there's different schools of magic and alchemy and stuff like that. And then you unlock more as you're going through. And then when you reset, it takes like the multipliers that you had for like your schools and stuff like that and makes it a little easier the next time. And then there's specific things that you like. Illusion is one of the schools of magic. And when you get that high enough in one of the games, the Master of Illusion will show up. And if you beat the Master of Illusion, then the next one you do, not this one, but the next one you do, the illusion spells get stronger, and stuff like that. So it's really fun. There's not a whole lot to it. I'm just mostly like set it to auto battle and stuff and just like watch TV.
Super SNES sounds really weird.
It is.
Like, I mean, it sounds interesting, but like it also sounds really weird. Like it sounds like you say it's a next generation clicker. It does sound like this weird mutation of a lot of different phone games together.
Yeah, definitely. And it's really fun. It's really fun. And then aside from that, I have been watching some people playing games on TikTok. And I never saw Rocket League before, but I was watching someone play Rocket League, and they were GC, which I assumed was Grand Champion or something. So they were a GC during a tournament. I don't know what it means, but it was really good. And the first one that I saw, the guy was like, a bunch of the people in the comments are like, "Oh, I could beat you. I could do better than you. You're not that good." So I'm just gonna find the people that if you want to fight me in here, just let me know. I'll invite you, and I will kick your butt. And it's funny because he just ripped through everybody.
That's awesome.
But everyone was like, "Oh, you don't use the mechanics well. Oh, you don't even know how to do this. You don't even know how to do this." And he just wrecked them all. And another one I saw was a Super Mario World hack called Bowser's Revenge, which was just a whole new game, but it's in the style of Super Mario World, and it looked really, really fun. But one level was just like extremely difficult. Like it was horrible. So that was fun. And so that's been about it for my gaming related things.
Yeah. Rocket League is always like a really interesting game because it's really simple to pick up and play. Like anybody can like get the feel for that game in like 5 minutes. And because it's basically soccer with cars. And then you watch somebody who's really good at that game and it like blows your mind. Yeah. Because like they're doing stuff that like you never even knew you could do in that game. Like I've watched people before, and they're so like the I guess most basic thing is you'll watch them and they're like dribbling the ball like on top of the car, like they're juggling it, and you're like, oh, okay, that's weird. Like I can barely even connect with the ball. Like you're doing this, and then you watch the people and they're literally like never touching the ground. They're just like flying around the field, and I'm just like, that's, to me, that game is one of the easiest to explain to people the difference in like skill level in a video game, because it's so simple to understand and pick up, and like anybody can. But like then once you see somebody who's really good at it, they're like is instantly recognizable, right? Like I understand what you're saying about this guy. Maybe it's not because he's not doing some of the like more show-offy stuff. But like somebody who's really good at it, like you watch it and go, oh, it's like watching like somebody who's really good at soccer, and you're like instantly like, oh no, you're much better than me.
Yeah. It reminds me of that like viral tweet that always says like in the Olympics they need to have like one regular person, just to like for comparison. And it, the also reminded me there was I guess I saw it maybe yesterday. I think it's the 2028 Olympics. This is going to be in Los Angeles. They are talking about adding, or maybe they've already approved adding flag football, like American style football. And I guess the NFL is encouraging players to like compete or in it. And so somebody's like, man, I just can't wait to see like Jamar Chase run like a 9 route against some Lithuanian elementary school teacher. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it feels a little unfair to like, this is, obviously American football exists in other countries, but probably not to the extent that like
And there's
NFL
rugby and
does.
stuff.
Yeah.
There's something similar.
But yeah, it's just funny to like think like, yeah, it's just you get that comparison where you see somebody who's like, and I'm sure these people who are saying, oh, you're not that good, like they probably play the game a lot.
Yeah.
Like I imagine these are people who also have like probably hundreds of hours in the game.
Yeah.
But like you see this skill difference that's, incredible.
It's going to be like the Dream Team. Like if you watch the first Dream Team in '92 versus the International, and they looked like they were playing against elementary school teams. And I'm not just saying that to be mean, but like they're just running circles around those guys.
Yeah.
And then all those guys were like, "Oh yeah, we got to get better."
Yeah.
Like, and of course now, like international teams are super good and super competitive with our pros. So maybe that's what will happen with football.
Well, and it, I think it must have been 10, 15 years ago or so. There was one game where it was like the U.S. basketball team beat whatever country they were playing by like 80 or something like that. And after the game, the players on the other team are like walking up to Kobe Bryant for like an autograph. Right. Like, yeah, I mean, like what? That's what I would be doing as well. It's like, yeah.
The other thing that you reminded me of was, so a friend of mine sent me this tweet last night, and it was some guy talking about how he could score points off of Serena Williams if he played her in tennis. And this other guy
I love those people.
This other guy had quote tweeted it and been like, I step out onto the court against Serena. I wink at her. She does not smile at me. She'd be prettier if she smiled occasionally. Serena throws the ball up and serves it. The ball instantly travels straight through my skull. I am dead. And I told my friend, I said, yeah, that would be me on the court with Serena Williams. Yeah. She would instantly kill me. She wouldn't just beat me. She would kill me. Me putting the racket up would be trying to save my face. Please don't hit me, Serena. And I don't think people understand the difference sometimes between what a professional athlete, man or woman, compared to somebody who played high school, sports, right? Wow. Like how much better those people are. Mm-hmm. And I think the same thing is true when it comes to like esports. Mm-hmm. Everybody's like, well, I play Rocket League. Yeah, I've played Rocket League. Mm-hmm. I cannot do what those really good people can do.
Yeah, there was a show called Pros versus Joes that exactly did that, where they took whatever, and these are like retired
I remember that.
Professional athletes going against sort of the high school superstar or whatever. And so you're just like, and it's like watching these guys in football trying to cover Jerry Rice, and it's it's just like Jerry Rice 10 years after he's retired, right? And so it's always very entertaining to like think about that. Those steps up.
Yeah.
And it absolutely is applicable to something like Rocket League or Fortnite or any of those games that become competitive.
I remember Katie Nolan, I believe is her name, for ESPN. Mm-hmm. She had a show on ESPN for a while, and one of the things was there were all these guys who were getting on there and attacking NFL kickers because like they missed this field goal or something. And all these guys on social media are like, oh, I could make that. So she got those guys and invited them and had an indoor field. And she said, okay, we're going to set this up. And it was something like, 45-yard kicks. And she said, we're going to start you at 30. And these guys were like, oh, okay. And so then they were like kicking it, and it was going like 5 yards.
With no defense or anybody running to come crush you. Yeah.
And it wasn't even getting off the ground. They were just skidding it across the ground. And it, I love it because
it's beautiful.
She's just standing there roasting them the entire time.
Yeah. Ninja, the famous Fortnite streamer, had one of those tweets that was like that. Like, I can't believe all these kickers getting paid millions of dollars and they just can't make a kick. And it's like, dude, and somebody said the same thing about how do you play Fortnite for so many times and not win every single game or something? But yeah,
that's always fun and entertaining. Is that everything, OJ?
Yeah, I think so. I have something I'm going to talk about later, but
okay. So I last night got access to Super Mario Brothers Wonder. It unlocked last night, and so I've put a little bit of time into it last night and this morning. I actually was going to bring it to work with me so I could play it between teaching and coming in here and doing this, and then I forgot it, and so I ended up with other stuff to do anyways. So Super Mario Brothers Wonder, I think probably everybody who would be listening to this would know, but it's the new 2D style Mario game. It is notable and has been notable up until now because they have gone in and completely redone the sort of artistic style of it. So this is not in the same style as the new Super Mario Brothers games, which are, so I was shocked to hear this, and I guess it makes sense. This is true. But since the 16-bit Mario games, since Super Mario World and Yoshi's Island, there has not been a 2D style Mario game other than the new Super Mario Brothers games. Which...
Yeah, I suppose.
I say the only other one that I would think of, but I think it is in that new Super Mario Bros. Style, is like the Auto Runner phone app game.
Right, Run.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, when you think back, that's like 30 years, especially if you don't count Yoshi's Island, which is a very different kind of game, right? It's its own series now, apart from the Mario games. And so I did not hate the new Super Mario Brothers games. I think they're actually kind of fun. I think they're differing quality levels, certainly, but I don't think those are terrible games. But they always felt very sort of sterile as games. Like, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of life to them. And so this game really leans into, like, and they said they actually spent something like 10 times more budget on the animations and everything for this game than they did previous 2D Mario games. And it really shows. So, like, everything has animation to it. So, like, when Mario runs into a pipe, his hat will fly off and he'll, like, reach out the pipe and grab the hat and pull it in with him. And, like, you can turn into Elephant Mario. And so you're bigger, and, like, one of the things I like about that is that they actually changed the physics for it. So now he's heavier and he doesn't, jumps are harder and everything. But, like, when he goes into a pipe, he has to squeeze into it. And so, like, he'll, like, grab the sides of the pipe and kind of push himself down into it. And, like, there's just little touches like that everywhere in the game, just little animation touches that really make it feel more alive. And, you know, really, when I think back to playing Super Mario World, and I played it at the time it came out, that, like, you really were looking ahead and, like, well, what is a Mario game in 30 years going to look like, right? And, it's going to be, like, so much better than this, so many more colors and so much more stuff going on screen, so much more detailed. And this sort of feels like that delivered on, right? Much more than the new Super Mario Brothers games did. And again, I don't think those are bad games. I just don't think they're amazing games, I guess is the way to say it. So that's all really cool. The other thing is you collect Wonder Flyers. And so if you've watched the trailers, then the parts where, like, everything kind of goes crazy and the pipes come alive and start moving. So that's when you collect a Wonder Flyer. There's one of those in every level. And they do different things in every level. So in one level, they might make the pipes come alive and start crawling around. And in another level, they might make a stampede of animals, and you can, like, run along the top of the stampede. So it's very much like Sunset Riders. And another level, it may make it shooting superstars come down, and you are basically invincible running through the entire level. And so they do different things in every level, which is, like, super cool. So this is a minor spoiler, but it's like the third level of the game. And I'm not far enough to spoil anything major, I don't think, but, like, this is like the third level of the game. You collect one of them, and the piranha plants come out of the pipes, and they start singing, and they start dancing. And like they're putting on like this musical number as you like run through and are trying to avoid them. And like
that's amazing.
Yeah, and so like you're in the Flyer Kingdom, and there's little flyers throughout every level, and as you run by them, they speak to you, and they actually record a voice for it, which is kind of not normal in a Mario game, where it's just usually Mario going whoopee. So there's more to this with all of that, and so it just makes the levels much more exciting. Like as I go into each new level, I'm kind of excited to see, okay, well, what's the gimmick for this level other than just the level design itself? Like, how is getting the flyer going to change this level? And then you get into certain sections of the overworld map, and instead of it being a straight path from one level to the next, it kind of opens up into an area you can more explore in kind of a 3D area. And as you go around that, there'll be like special levels. So like you collect badges. Again, this is in the trailer. So like one of the first badges you get is a parachute hat. And so when you jump, you can like pull your hat and kind of use it as a parachute to kind of glide around the level. You collect a double jump one and some other things, or wall jump, I guess I should say. And then there will be special levels sometimes that are based around those badges. So there'll be a level that you have to get through using the hat gliding. There'll be a level that you have to wall jump your way through and everything. And those are pretty cool because they're forcing you to use those new abilities, which you don't really have to use to get through a level. Like the levels are designed so that, at least so far, they seem to be designed that you can use no badges or any badge to get your way through. So having specific levels that force you to use a badge are like neat, but they're optional. You don't have to do those levels if you don't want to. Maybe you do to like collect the 100% the game, I'm sure. But so all that's really cool. And just so far, it's like a really well-made 2D Mario game. I've heard some people say it is the true sequel to Super Mario World that we never really have gotten. So like, this kind of in response to what you were talking about earlier, Mario, I really love Super Mario World. I think it's a fantastic game. And part of the reason why is I don't think any 2D platformer has really ever surpassed it. I think there are games that have done really great things like Celeste, like modern games that I think are amazing, but they're not quite doing the same thing that Super Mario World did.
Sure.
And so like, I think that's a really fantastic game. And so I think that's a lot to say, well, this is the true successor. I think that's a heavy burden to put on this game. Anytime you take like one of the greatest games of all time and say, well, this is the true sequel, you're kind of like, I don't know. Like, is that fair?
Yeah, that's a big ask.
Yeah.
That's what, when I say it's not necessarily for me, even though that might be the case, I fully understand why people consider it to be one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest game of all time.
Yeah.
And I would totally agree with you how alive Super Mario World feels compared to the new Super Mario Bros. Style platformers. I think that's I think calling them sterile is a fair, I don't know if you even call it a critique, but like, I think it's a fair statement. And so that's exciting to hear that Wonder sort of recaptures that vibrance that, at least from, it sounds like what you're saying, recaptures some of that vibrance from SMW.
Yeah. One of the things I don't recall seeing in the trailers, though it probably was there, there are some levels where you have to move in and out of the background. And so like you'll go through a pipe and now all of a sudden you're in the background and like exploring there. So you stay kind of in the foreground, but you see yourself running around in the background.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of a neat twist on Mario and everything.
Yeah, I don't know if they showed it. They definitely hinted at it. One of the flowers like, oh, how do you get back there type of thing.
Yeah.
So they indicated it for sure.
Yeah, one of the flyers says that too.
I know the Paper Marios, particularly Thousand Year Door, had a lot of that sort of foreground, background stuff as well. So it's cool to see them incorporating that as a feature.
Yes, Super Paper Mario on the Wii was the one that also did a lot of that, I think.
Super Paper Mario has like the first ability you get changes the perspective from 2D to 3D, which opens up certain aspects of like, oh, there are things behind this block and yeah. So like I said, it's cool to see them bringing that back, that incorporation of playing with perspective and stuff like that.
And certainly the modern Donkey Kong Country games have done that.
Yeah.
Tropical Freeze did that. I remember quite a bit. So anyways, again, I haven't even been the first boss to this. I'm to the castle of the first real area that you get to. It seems like there's a lot of optional levels. A lot of areas that you can just walk off to and, there's 2 or 3 levels over here. And like, I don't even have to technically play these. One of the things I think that's kind of neat is that they do rate all the levels on difficulty. So there's like a star rating.
Yeah.
And most of them have been 1 star so far, but then there are ones that are 2 star. And then we did see this in the trailer, but the Yoshi characters or Nabbit, if you play as them, they're invincible. And so I have heard a lot of people say, I'm playing this game with my kid, and my kid is playing as Nabbit or Yoshi, and I'm playing as Mario, and this is fantastic because my kid gets to play with me, and they're not upset and like sitting there, and they're not getting to play because their character died. This seems like a really good Mario game. Yeah. There's an online element too where you can kind of interact with other players' ghost in the game. And that's something you turn on within the game world. You go to a little place and turn that on. I have not done that yet because I kind of want to play through the game without that and maybe go back and try it later.
Yeah.
But again, I'm very early in it, so I can't really pass judgment on it yet. I will say what I've played so far is fantastic. And if the game keeps up at this level, I think it's going to be an amazing Mario game. And I've heard that there are surprises later in the game, which wouldn't surprise me. So obviously, Super Mario Odyssey had some really cool surprises. I think at this point we can spoil some of that, but like the later parts of Super Mario Odyssey, like on the moon, are some of the most amazing parts of that game to me. And so if they can replicate that, this will be amazing. And you talked about liking the 3D Marios better. I love Super Mario Odyssey. I think that game is vastly underrated, as much praise as it got. I think people don't appreciate how amazing of a game that is. I also think Super Mario 3D World, that has gotten ported over to the Switch now, is an amazing Mario game that a lot of people overlooked because it was on the Wii U originally. This is another banger from Nintendo in a year of bangers from Nintendo. So, way to go, Nintendo. And, next week, hopefully I'll have more to say about it when I've actually had time to play it.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about some news. And the biggest news that we missed last week is that Microsoft finally closed their deal acquiring Activision Blizzard King. So Microsoft now officially owns StarCraft. They officially own World of Warcraft. They own Crash Bandicoot and Call of Duty. Just a whole pantheon of weird things to think about. That these are now Microsoft properties. So they did close the deal. They have come out and said, do not expect these games on Game Pass until 2024. So a lot of people had kind of expected these games to roll out day one. That is not happening. But the interesting thing, I think, is we have started to get all these games onto Steam. So that started with Tony Hawk, came out on Steam. I did buy that. It's I'd already played it on console, but man, that's a fantastic game. You could release that game on every console, and I would probably buy it on every console. It's just one of the best games ever made. And they also put out Diablo 4 this last week onto Steam. So, that feels like we're already seeing this effect of Microsoft taking over and these games just getting pushed out to a wider variety of platforms and places to play them, but not to Game Pass until next year. We're only 3 months away, so it's not too bad. Bobby Kotick is put out a statement that he is staying on through the end of 2023, and I think those are his words, through the end of 2023. That makes it sound like after 2023 he's out, which a lot of people will be celebrating. So it looks like our long national nightmare is over in a couple of ways. One, Microsoft has finally completed this deal. No more news about that. Hopefully, hopefully we're really done.
Is there any wood around that we can knock on real quick?
I mean, there's some wood in these tables. There's just a plastic veneer over them. And the second one is that Bobby Kotick may finally be out of video games. So, yay.
Bless.
This feels like celebrating that the villain died of a ripe old age. Like, yeah, it's good, but
we got to take our victories where we can get them.
But obviously this will be interesting, right? This is a much bigger Microsoft, a much more powerful Microsoft, a Microsoft that has access to a lot of cool properties, legacy properties. And it'll be interesting to see what they do with a lot of those. I mean, they own Activision. They own Pitfall now. One of the most classic early video games. Do they do anything with Pitfall? Does anybody want anything done with Pitfall? I mean, Pitfall seems ripe Pitfall 2 is one of the original Metroidvanias. So it seems ripe to bring that back and make a modern Metroidvania out of it. So we'll see what comes of that. In other news that we missed, PlayStation finally announced their PlayStation Slim. So don't call it that. They are not calling it that. They're just calling it the new PlayStation model.
Okay, PlayStation. Okay.
Hey, do not body shame the PlayStation. It's not slim. It's just different. It is coming out November 8th. It is 30% smaller and 18% lighter. That smaller is probably the biggest thing for a lot of people. That original model is a hunking beast.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And it's awkwardly shaped. It's so it doesn't fit inside entertainment cabinets conveniently.
Have they shown what this not slim looks like?
They did show it. They put out an announcement video and showed it in that video. But again, it's sort of hard to tell, right? Like until you see it in person, how much smaller is it actually?
I guess my interest, is it the same design?
Yes.
Like the same?
Yes.
Okay.
It is that wild fin design that either you hate or you love it because you hate it so much.
So the first meme I saw was if you have any Yu-Gi-Oh familiarity, was a Seto Kaiba's coat. Figured Alicia would appreciate that one. But anyways, so interesting that they've decided to keep the same
That's amazing.
design as well.
Yeah, I think that was the assumption from a lot of people that they would change that design.
Sure. Well, I'm thinking about like the other ones, like the 2 had different designs, the 3 had 100 different designs, it felt like. So,
Right.
yeah.
They're sticking with it for now. Whether we get a third iteration of it where they kind of make it more of a traditional box, we'll see. They are upgrading the hard drive. It will be a full 1 terabyte hard drive. So the current one is only like 800 gigabytes, not a full terabyte. It's always hard to say with those hard drives because they tell you it's a 1 terabyte hard drive, but then they are going to use like 100 gig of it in reserve for the OS and other elements. So you're not getting a full terabyte regardless, but still, it's a nice upgrade. So this is 2 models. There is the PS5, not slim, with disk drive, which is going to sell for $500, which is the same price the current model sells for. So you are getting a bigger hard drive, upgrade it there, no higher price. And then the digital is actually going up in price. It currently sells for $400, but this new version will sell for $450. And so these are replacing those older models. So that 400 models going away, they are actually doing a price hike on that. 3 years after it came out.
Yeah.
You're going to be paying $50 more.
Are all of the internals the same? Like, is this a more powerful system, or
It's
okay.
exactly the same.
Okay.
Now, there's probably some change with like the processor, like nanometer die, but that won't translate into more, more graphics on screen. The one thing that is different with this digital is that they are offering the ability to add on a disk drive after you purchase it. So if you buy the digital and later you decide, I want to be able to play physical media on this, you can buy a disk drive that snaps onto it in some manner for $80. Now, that means you are buying the standard $500 model now for $530. But I do see the value. Somebody who says, hey, I need to save every penny I can. I'm going to buy this $450 model right now. Down the road, I may have $80 to spend on this. But right now, that $50 is all the difference in the world. That would make more sense if it was $100 difference, right? Like even if you were paying $100 for this disk drive later and you paid $400 up front, $50 is a much smaller difference to me.
Yeah.
I bought the digital model when I bought one of these at launch. I didn't buy it at launch because you couldn't find them at launch, but within that year after they came out, that first year. And I bought the digital model because it was $100 cheaper, and I buy most of my games digitally anyway. But if it was only $50 difference, and it was going to be $80 later to buy this disk drive, maybe that would have convinced me to go ahead and buy that.
I'll say having the digital be $50 cheaper, but then $80 for a separate disk drive. It just reminds me of like when McDonald's tried to do a 1/3 pound burger. And it flopped because everyone thought 1/3 was smaller than the quarter pounder.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's what's happening here. It's like, like you said, 100, I could see it, but $50 to spend $30 more to get the same thing. Like at that point, personally for me, if the $50 was like the big thing in that moment, I'd be like, okay, just wait another 2 months until I can save $50.
have they said whether or not the disk drive will work on the old digital models?
I don't think it will.
Okay.
So I think if you want to upgrade your old digital model, you just have to buy a whole new PlayStation.
Live with your decisions.
So this story gets even crazier because both original models of the PlayStation 5 came with a vertical stand. So the vertical stand is, if you don't have a PlayStation 5, the vertical stand is the horizontal stand because the PlayStation 5 will not set up on its own because it's irregularly shaped. So you have to put this little stand underneath it. But then if you want to stand it vertically, you can, and then that screws into the bottom of the PlayStation 5 and will hold it up vertically. So they have created a new vertical stand, which is not going to be in the box, which is an additional $30. So this new model will stand horizontally on its own. It's got like a little kickstand built into it. But it will not stand vertically without this additional vertical stand, which is another $30, which means even if you buy the $500 model, you are still paying $530 to get everything that you currently get in a PlayStation 5. And if you buy our $450 digital friend, you're spending $80 on the hard drive and then an additional $30 onto this vertical stand. So now you're spending $560 to get the same model that you could get right now for $500.
I feel like the confused math lady meme right now.
It's crazy. I mean, obviously this is them nickel and diming people we don't want to raise the price because that will be bad for PR. So we are going to nickel and dime people to death on this by taking away small things and reselling them to you.
I feel like you could probably MacGyver a vertical stand for cheaper than $30. I mean, you might not want to do that with your $500 machine, but at the same time,
$30 does seem like a lot.
it does. It's probably, I mean, if it's similar to the one that came in the box, it's just a piece of plastic.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we're not done.
Okay, we're going to shout out Ryan here for a minute. Where's the hammer and sickle for PlayStation?
I'll let you go ahead.
There is also a PS5 Slim with disk drive that's coming. This is rumored. They have not officially announced this, but this is coming from a apparently reliable source that is going to be packed in with Spider-Man 2. So the current PlayStation 5 model is available with Spider-Man 2. There's a bundle out there. It's $560, which is, I guess, saving you $10. I'm pretty sure Spider-Man 2 is $70 new. Mm-hmm. So that's not bad. If you're buying one now, this is like the big game. And a lot of people are saying this is the big system seller for this PlayStation 5. So they are also doing this with the PlayStation 5 Slim with disk drive, also selling that for $560. So
this seems like a deal,
yeah,
actually.
They're actually not gouging you in this one situation.
So what they're not telling you, though, is that if you actually want Spider-Man in the game, you have to pay an extra $30.
It's just a box for Spider-Man.
There's no disc inside, no code. Yeah, so that's $560. That actually seems like a decent deal. If you are buying a PlayStation 5 at this point, you know, like this is the marquee game. I can imagine most people like buying a PlayStation 5. I understand some people have no interest in Spider-Man, but would probably want this game. And so you are saving a few bucks by buying it this way. So that does seem like a reasonable deal.
The real question is, can I set up a disk drive on a PS5 Slim with a disk drive already, have two disk drives, simultaneously 2 games at once? I'm just saying, PS5, the future is now.
Yeah, picture in picture.
Exactly, picture in picture, families and stuff like that.
It reminds me of old CD carousels where you have like 5 or 6 discs loaded at a time.
That's the new way to do randomizers.
It's the shuffler. The shuffler.
Yeah. I do not believe that works. No.
But the thing with this PS5 Slim with disk drive and Spider-Man 2, you still have to do the $30 vertical stand.
Yeah.
If you want to set it up vertically, right? I mean, I guess the argument there is if you are not setting it up vertically, you're not losing anything. You aren't spending $30.
Yeah.
But again, some people have to set it up vertically because there's just not physical space.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if 30% smaller, that seems significant. I mean, again, you got to see it, I guess. But I wonder if, I mean, again, I'm sure it's probably money at the end of the day. But I wonder if in their research, they also found that this fits in your conventional TV stand or entertainment system horizontally. So for whatever, most people will not need or maybe want to set it up vertically. They'll prefer to set it up horizontally. And, I'd like to think maybe that's their reasoning, but I'm sure it's just money.
Yeah. Though, I mean, that stand for the older models, it's not, it doesn't feel like anything fancy. I will say the way that it screws into the bottom, I actually really like that. Now, mine's not vertical right now. It's horizontal, but I do like the function of that. I think it's actually designed really well. It's like cool engineering, but not $30. Cool.
Yeah.
Maybe $10.
Yeah.
Maybe.
$10 seems reasonable. And that seems what those stands have traditionally cost, but maybe I'm misremembering because, there have been for the PlayStation 2 vertical stands and stuff like that in the past. So the PlayStation 2 also had that really cool PlayStation logo that would rotate depending on whether you had it vertical or horizontal. think a lot of people didn't know it did that, but I always thought that was like the coolest design feature.
I might go home and look at my PS2 and figure that out.
The original models, I don't know if the Slim does it, but I know the original models did that. The big fat ones,
which is the one I have. So
yeah, well, it should in that case. So cool news for that. Other news about new consoles. So Nate the Hate, who is a streamer and online games personality, has leaked out some information about the Switch 2. This is obviously unconfirmed by Nintendo, so we don't know this is true, but I thought it was at least kind of interesting. He said that there are 2 models, one of which will be all digital. The other one will read physical cards and everything. This seems incredibly likely to me, as we've seen. Obviously we were just talking about the all digital model for the PlayStation. Xbox has done this with their S and X models. So this seems entirely believable to me that there would be one that's just all digital and it would be sell for cheaper for that. So that's one of the rumors. The other one is that it will feature ray tracing in DLSS 3.5. I think everybody kind of expected DLSS 3. I think everybody thinks that it probably can do ray tracing, but probably no games will actually use that because PlayStation 5 and Xbox games sometimes struggle with doing ray tracing, and nobody really expects this to be as powerful as those systems. So that's at least interesting to hear about it. But that 2-model approach, that sounds entirely reasonable. It seems like all 3 of these companies, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, are wanting to push people to go more and more digital with their collection of games. I'm sure there are all sorts of reasons for that. Less of a cut they have to give to retail stores like Walmart, but also just, it's probably an easier approach on their perspective of not having to manufacture and ship all these. What if we could just upload games like people do to Steam and sell them directly that way? Let's see. John Riccitiello has stepped down as CEO of Unity in the least surprising news of the year.
Oh, man.
So this is following up. If you have not heard this news, Unity came out with new platform rules where you were going to have to pay per install that somebody did of a game developed in Unity. And developers en masse revolted against this, with many saying they were going to abandon Unity as their development platform. And even after that happened, Unity responded terribly and basically just kind of dragged their feet. And I think maybe it felt like they were thinking, all right, let's see if people still care a week from now. Let's see if people still care 2 weeks from now. And, finally they came out and they did amend some of that. But John Riccitiello, the CEO, is out in response to all this.
This feels like, if Bobby Kotick is the villain dies of old age, this at least is the villain got arrested right away. He did his crime and now he's done.
Yeah, I mean, Riccitiello has kind of a history of some of this, but nothing quite at the level of Bobby Kotick. So we did at least get him like middle age or something. So let's see. Analog has announced they are working on a 4K FPGA Nintendo 64 for 2024. Analog makes these very expensive FPGA-based systems. They've done one for the NES, the Super Nintendo, the Genesis. They have one coming out of the Turbo Duo, so the TurboGrafx 16 with the CD add-on.
They have a Game Boy as well.
Yeah, the Game Boy one, the Analog Pocket. And so these are FPGA, which if you don't know what FPGA is, it is basically trying to get closer to hardware emulation versus traditional software emulation, so that games would run lag-free and would run exactly as you remember playing them on the original hardware. So these systems that they put out will play cartridges. So that's part of the appeal, is that if you have a collection of old NES games, you can buy their analog model, or even the analog pocket will allow you to swap in, right, different readers. So if you want to play Game Boy and Game Gear, and there's a few others that it allows. So people who have a huge collection of old games really like these systems for that. And now they're doing one for the Nintendo 64, which is pretty amazing. Like, first off, FPGAs have not been able to run the Nintendo 64 games at an acceptable quality level. They've got them up running, but they're still full of errors and everything. If they get this out, this is a pretty big breakthrough. And also, like, obviously there are diehard Nintendo 64 fans who will snatch this up to play Ocarina of Time and Mario 64 and all of those. So this thing will probably be, $200 plus when it comes out. That's what their other systems have been. So, but still kind of cool to see somebody doing that work. And theoretically, once they do this, this will help the development of, they are a private company. They are hiring somebody to do this development for them. But then there's also the open source side of FPGA with the MiSTer. And theoretically, this could translate into helping that long term. And so, we might be getting closer to the day where you can play all games as they originally were, as originally they worked and everything, without lag, without any sort of issues in there. That's the dream, I think, for FPGA fans. Let's see. Zen Studios, they're the makers of Pinball FX. They have announced they've laid off 32 employees. And it should be noted that Zen Studios is owned by Embracer. So another company, they're just kind of embracing them to death.
Oh, man.
I
feel like we've had stories the last, 4 episodes of these companies laying people off.
Yep. I think during COVID, right, everybody was kind of stuck at home. People were spending a ton of money on video games. A lot of these companies went out and acquired a whole lot of studios and kind of beefed themselves up. And then they didn't really have a long-term plan. That's what it seems like. Like, that was Embracer, right? Embracer went out and bought up everyone. Embracer owns the movie rights to Lord of the Rings. And so, movie and video game rights, I guess I should say. So they just bought up everything. And, it's hard to build a company of that size and that scope overnight and make it profitable.
Yeah.
Right? You just can't bring together all these disparate pieces and throw them into a stew and say, okay, well, we're a hugely profitable company now. That's different than Microsoft buying Activision. Microsoft is already a successful company in developing video games, right? And they're just adding a component onto that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these companies just staffed up too much. And, they just can't continue at that level, which is tragic for the people who are losing jobs now. And, in some cases, that's a little easier, I guess, if you're working remotely. But, imagine these people who packed up and moved.
Yeah.
And then, within a couple of years, lost a job. I mean, that happens to people all the time, I suppose. But that's rough in life.
I'll say it happens all the time, and it's never easy.
No, it's not. So, again, our condolences, our thoughts go out to the people who lost their jobs from Zen Studios, and also the people left behind there. That's also not easy when other people lose their jobs around you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk real quick here, kind of do a Metacritic review roundup. So we talked about Super Mario Brothers Wonder. We've mentioned Spider-Man 2. I kind of wanted to look at some of the big games that have come out very recently because we are getting big games every few days now. And we've had like 3 big games this week. And Alan Wake 2 comes out, I think, next week.
That's right. I
Yeah.
keep forgetting about that. I feel like every time you say something, I'm like, that's right.
Yeah, I feel like it's been kind of an easy game to forget, but it's a game I'm very hyped for, and despite that. So these are the Metacritic scores. Metacritic is sort of like Rotten Tomatoes. They are taking scores from a variety of different publications and trying to figure out a general review for these games. So they currently have Super Mario Brothers Wonder at a 93, which is, anything a 90 or above is a pretty amazing score on Metacritic. It means you're probably one of the best games of the year.
Yeah.
Spider-Man 2 is at a 91. The Forza Motorsport, this is the new one that they've just stopped numbering those, I guess, now. That stands at an 85 currently. Assassin's Creed Mirage is a 77. That's the new one that is a sort of throwback to the old style before they went open world RPG. So this is much more like, I guess, was it Unity was maybe the last one we had like that style?
Something like that.
Oh, no, it was the one in England was the last one, I believe. But yeah, it's been a few years since we've had one of those kind of classic style Assassin's Creeds. And the last one on this list is Sonic Superstars. That came out in the last week. That is the new, much like Super Mario Brothers Wonder, it's kind of a throwback to the Genesis days of Sonic games. And I guess the big kind of feature for that is it offers 4 players simultaneous play at the same time. Very much kind of the doing what the new Super Mario Brothers games have done previously. And Super Mario Brothers Wonder also does. So that's at a 75. That's the lowest, but like a 75 is not necessarily like a terrible score either.
I'll say, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking grades. Like
Right.
75 is still a C, you still passed the class, you still made it.
Yeah, I think most of the reviews I've seen for that game so far have said it's not terrible, but it's completely forgettable.
That's kind of what I've been hearing is like, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's not outstanding. It's not a train wreck. It's fine.
So the game that's missing from here is Skull Island Rise of Kong.
I did see that came out.
What?
Yeah. So have you seen anything about it?
No.
I have a little.
Oh, well.
I was going to say, I think I scrolled past something on Twitter where people were talking about it, but I did not look into it.
So people are calling it Gollum 2. Okay. It's bad.
On a scale of from Strangers of Paradise to Mortal Kombat 1 on Switch.
From what I'm hearing,
That's probably a pretty small scale.
right, that's a single point. But no, from what I've seen, it looks worse than Mortal Kombat does on the Switch.
Wow.
And I saw a couple of videos, and like one of the videos I saw on Twitter was like 3 crabs just like pop up on the screen, and then they just like kind of float towards Kong. And then
As crabs do.
yeah. And then like as he's running, he's not touching the ground like Kong, and it just looks so bad. Like but yeah, people were like, oh, it's we thought Gollum was bad this year. Let's look at Skull Island Rise of Kong.
It's also a weird property to be making a game of because
Yeah.
that film, Kong Skull Island, came out, like 10 years ago?
I thought it was like,
More than that.
yeah.
I'd go closer to 15, 20 years ago.
I don't think it's quite 20, but it may be closer to 15.
I'll say
yeah.
it was like 2000.
Unless I'm thinking of a different movie, but
But it predates the Kong versus Godzilla film.
Yeah.
Because like that was them trying to build up their own cinematic universe and everything.
2017.
2017.
Oh, this is a different movie then? I'm thinking of the one that had like Jack Black in it.
The Peter Jackson.
Okay, yeah,
one,
that's the one I'm thinking.
Oh
of.
yeah. No, that was like 2001.
That's why I was like, that was an old movie.
Yeah, that one is.
That's a real throwback to like, we've decided to make a game.
So you said 2017?
Yeah.
I would thought it was longer than 6 years ago, but like, okay, 6 years ago. It's weird to be putting out a tie-in to that. Yeah. Because actually, I kind of like that movie, but it's also not a movie that has persisted in the public consciousness.
Yeah.
Didn't even know that movie existed.
Right, obviously. Example.
Yeah, you'd think if they were going to do a King Kong tie-in, it would be Kong versus Godzilla.
Right. Yeah, that's much more recent.
Because that was like, what, 2 years ago?
Well, and then that movie, you run into the issue, I guess, maybe of getting the license for Godzilla. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how those licenses are divvied up, who controls what. Toho, I guess, still owns Godzilla, but I don't know how that works. But, like, yeah, this seems like a really weird property to be putting something out now.
Yeah.
It
I
is
can
from...
even see doing a King Kong game, but specifically tying it to that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that seems weird to make a King Kong game and title it Kong Skull Island. Because
But Skull Island Rise of Kong. And I think you're
very
a
different.
baby King Kong.
Oh, okay. Is that
Your
what
baby
it's...
King
It's a
Kong?
prequel?
Is that actually the name?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, let's see.
I knew it had Kong and Skull Island in it, so
Yeah.
I instantly attached it to the movie.
There was a second where my brain registered your question, Justin, as the name is actually Baby King Kong.
I mean, look, if they made a game called Baby King Kong,
I would buy that game.
I would be interested in that.
I have never been a King Kong person because like intelligent monkeys scare my mom, and so like that's just never been a thing in our household. But I would buy Baby King Kong.
So not a Grodd fan?
She is not.
Okay.
The
I knew you're a fan.
rest
We're
of us
all
are.
comic book fans. So.
The rest of us are. Anytime Grodd is on, she's like, she's giving the TV the evil eye.
Did they ever make like a Planet of the Apes game based off of the new trilogy of movies? Because I feel like those movies were pretty well received. Granted, I don't know if like licensed movie games are as popular as they were, but
They're not, and I don't know. It seems
just
like
thinking
they
about
must
Smart
have.
Monkeys, you know.
Yeah, it seems like they must have, right? Like, but I actually don't know.
I feel like the first one came out in a time when it was still decently popular to do movie tie-in games. So like, I would think probably the first one, but I don't know. I think by the end of the trilogy, that had kind of died off.
And those all have some other words in the titles as well. Rise and
Yeah,
War and something else.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was gonna say fall, and then I was like, I don't think that's right.
So that they might all be the same as whatever the Tomb Raider, the new Tomb Raider, Rise.
Yeah, they may be.
Next Tomb Raider game takes place on Skull Island.
So, Alicia, I got to ask you, because I feel like if anybody would know this and appreciate it, it would be you. So, in the CW Arrowverse shows, Grodd is in one of those.
I think he comes in season 3 of The Flash.
Okay. And he travels back in time to kill Barack Obama? Is that right?
What?
I fell off of the CW shows when I went to college, so
So there's this clip where he travels back in time to kill Barack Obama while he's still in college.
that might have been Legends of Tomorrow. I feel like that's the
Okay.
kind of wacky thing that they would have done.
Probably, that sounds right. Like, and I only ever watched Arrow. I watched like the first 2 seasons of that.
So you stopped at the right time.
It felt like the right time to quit watching that show.
Yeah.
Season 2 of Arrow and season 1 of Flash were the best of the Arrowverse.
But anyways, I watched that clip online one time and I was like, this is amazing. I don't care what the rest of the show is. Like, you're sending Gorilla Grodd back in time to kill Barack Obama as a college student.
That is delightful.
Because like they could have sent him back in time to kill Kennedy or something. Like, Obama was still very relevant at that time. It seemed like a really weird plot for a TV show, a comic book TV show to do.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Yeah.
So, anyways.
I think if I remember right, they like referenced and like not quite cameo, but like an off-screen cameo from Grodd in season 1 of Flash, and even then, my mom was like, "Nope."
That's really funny that she has a problem with intelligent monkeys.
It freaks her out. It's her uncanny valley thing. She's like, "Nope, no smart monkeys."
Let's see. So yeah, I mean, we have these 5 games. There's obviously still a few big games coming out the rest of this year. You know, usually most games try to get out prior to Thanksgiving because they want to be able to hit that Black Friday shopping days for Christmas gifts and everything. But this has been a packed year, and like I think the thing that's particularly interesting to me when you look at Super Mario Brothers Wonder and Marvel both being 90 plus games. We've had so many 90-plus games this year. We've had things like Baldur's Gate, and we've had, obviously, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I feel like Street Fighter 6 was right up there.
And that's even just looking at, like, summer. Like,
yeah.
What happened in January? I don't remember.
So Hi-Fi Rush came out back in January, which is a fantastic game that everybody has forgotten about because there's been so many kind of like all-time great games to come out in between there. I mean, when Christina was on the show, we talked about how Diablo 4 has kind of been like lost in this shuffle, right? Like,
yeah.
And, you know, it seems like everybody I've talked to, including her, have said they really love Diablo 4. And, you know, it seems like it's kind of getting forgotten. Hogwarts Legacy came out this year.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like that
That's
was
right.
this year, right?
I think it was either this year or late last year. I know.
I think it was early this year.
Yeah,
I think it was January.
Because for a class last semester, I wrote a paper about it, and yeah, it must have been earlier this year that it came out then.
Yeah. I know the Switch port is coming like in the next few months, and the tweets have already started with the PS1 Hagrid graphic comparisons.
Let's hope it's better than Mortal Kombat, at least.
It probably is much better than Mortal Kombat. The PS1 is what I'm talking about. It's probably much better than Mortal Kombat.
I feel like better graphics than Mortal Kombat 1 on Switch has become the new still a better love story than Twilight.
If I can really quick, just to show some respect to Assassin's Creed Mirage. I have not played it, but I've heard a lot of people talk about one of the things, and I think that Ubisoft does this well in terms of like getting those small details right. When it comes to Assassin's Creed, there have been a lot of Muslim players who have talked about the accuracy of the game in terms of like the ways that they depict the salat or like the daily prayers that Muslims do. You like in the game when you see people doing it, they are like facing, I would think it would be southwest or southeast, whatever, but it'll be like the actual proper direction.
Towards Mecca.
Yeah, if you were actually in that location. And so I think that is something to recognize because it's something that I've seen on Twitter that a lot of people may not fully appreciate, but I think that, like I said, I think it's something that Ubisoft deserves credit for. They do get those small details and they work really hard, I imagine, to get those small details right. And I think it deserves that recognition. I just want to say that really quick.
That's awesome that they paid that much attention to make sure that they were doing that.
Yeah, well, I just think about like I had to be one of the early ones, but their construction of like Notre Dame and how when after the fire they were like using Assassin's Creed in terms of like the reconstruction because of how accurate it was. So, like I said, if Ubisoft has a lot of problems for sure.
Right.
I think it was just a couple of weeks ago y'all were talking about some more wrongdoings by higher ups in Ubisoft, but like I said, I do.
It could be any week.
Yeah.
True story.
Unfortunately, but like I said, I do think they deserve some recognition for that.
Yeah, I think absolutely. You're right. And that's cool, right? Because that is definitely something that 10 years ago video games would not have done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we can go back, 20 plus years ago, there were games that had to be recalled because they had like Muslim prayers in the soundtrack, right? And so I think that's true of Ocarina of Time.
Yeah,
like
Ocarina, then the Fire Temple.
Yeah, and but there were a couple other games that also had that issue. So yeah, taking that seriously and trying to be respectful when you can, right? Like, it is a cool thing to see them do. I forget which one it was. The first open world one they did in Egypt, which is
Origins.
Origins. I can never remember the subtitles. That one, after the game came out, they patched in this history mode where like you can like walk around and they have a historian like talking about like the market and like this is historically accurate and what is right about this and what is not right about it and the pyramids and everything. And I just thought that was like the coolest thing. Like,
that's really cool.
You're making this historical game and you're going to offer this sort of educational mode where you feel like, yeah, I'll buy my kid this so that in addition, I'm going to make them play through this with the history mode turned on so that they're actually learning something along the way. That's just really cool that you went to that extent. Not just to make it look authentic, but to try to actually be authentic in your depictions. So that sounds a lot like what you're talking about with this now.
Well, and especially with it being cultures that, are generally not treated with that respect in a lot of situations, just really shows, it goes beyond just going that extra mile.
Right. Yeah, particularly in Western media, right? Islam has not been treated particularly well in Western media, particularly, in the aftermath of 9/11. We saw a lot of really ugly portrayals that were, of the Muslim faith. And so to see a Western developer actually trying to get that right, like I would hope that would go a long way. And it sounds like what you're seeing on social media is it does.
From what I've seen, like I said, people have highlighted that aspect of it.
Good for them. Yes, we should give Ubisoft credit when Ubisoft gets something right. That
where we can.
Positive reinforcement like you do with a dog. Good boy. No, don't chew that. Oh, okay. One step forward, 2 steps back with Ubisoft. All right, a couple of last things here, just real quick. Lord of the Rings Gollum, speaking of which, you brought this up, OJ. Their apology that they put out after the game, after it was such a disaster, one of the developers behind the game has come out and said, hey, we didn't write that. Somebody else wrote that using ChatGPT.
I can't even. Like, this weekend up on the mountain, one of the performances was everything you can do, AI can do better. And so they used ChatGPT in really interesting ways to create that performance. And I had like a spark of hope where I was like, wow, like ChatGPT can be used for good. And then like I watch YouTube videos of people, playing Pokemon games, like using how ChatGPT tells them to, and it just turns into meme runs, and I'm like, this is hilarious. And then something like this, I'm just like, doggone it. Why? Why?
I'm not gonna lie, I want to play this game so bad. Like, I feel like you got to be able to find like a $5 copy of this game somewhere.
eBay.
And I want to play this game so bad.
Black Friday, doesn't this seem like one of those games that's going to be marked down to $10 or something?
Yeah.
And it's also like, to kind of build off that, this also feels like one of those games, because it's licensed and because it's a disaster, that license is going to expire and they are not going to bother renewing it. And so this game is going to get pulled off digital storefronts at some point. Like, we've seen that with several big games, and this seems like one that's definitely going to happen.
Yeah.
sooner rather than later, probably. So, yeah, I'd be interested in watching you play that. I don't know if I actually want to play it.
I will tune in for every stream on that.
And we'll watch OJ play Kong Skull Island. Baby Kong. And the last thing here real quick is Mario and Luigi's new voice is Kevin Afghani. So I don't really know a whole lot. I did look up his IMDb page, and it looked like he had done some work for what's that Chinese game?
Genshin?
Yeah, Genshin Impact. And then he also done some anime work, it looked like, but like not extensive. Like he was relatively kind of new in the industry, not somebody who had like 20 years of experience.
I'll say it feels very much like it feels like they were deliberate in picking someone who doesn't have a whole lot of credits to his name yet. That way it can be, he is Mario.
Yeah.
I think back to like, and I don't think Nintendo was doing this. This is a very bad practice. Don't do this, anyone. But like when Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs came out, Walt Disney wrote into the contract for the woman who voiced Snow White that she could never do another voice acting gig. Because he wanted her voice to only be Snow White.
Disney.
Jeez.
Yeah. That's a bad practice. Don't do that. But in terms of like taking someone, it's not like they got... I love seeing articles where it's like, Chris Pratt is out as Mario. It's like, yeah, they didn't get Chris Pratt where he's got all that other roles that you're recognizing him as.
Right.
I'm just thankful it's not Chris Pratt, who is a cannibal, I'm sure, by the way. Don't know if there's anything about that out there now, but now there should be.
You're just putting it out there into the ether.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of reminded me something, Alicia. So this is my viewing recommendation of the week. Disney put out this cartoon called Once Upon a Studio. Have you all seen this?
Yeah, I've heard of that.
So it's the 100th anniversary of Disney Animation. And so they made this video, which is basically what happens at their animation studio after everybody leaves, and all the characters are like jumping out of the paintings on the walls, and they're all getting together to take like a 100th anniversary shot together. So it's got Mickey and Minnie in them, and it's got classic characters like Snow White and Cinderella, but then it's got the modern characters like from Frozen and Wreck-It Ralph and all the Disney animation films.
I saw too that they like reuse voice clips from Robin Williams to have Genie.
Yeah, so the Genie is in it, and they used some unused clips. They were clips like from his recording sessions and everything that they didn't originally use, and they were very clear about that because they didn't want people to think this was AI.
Yeah.
And they were very clear that they went to his family and asked permission to use these to have the Genie show up in it. But like one of the things they did do was they went and they got a bunch of the original actors. So like they went and got what's her name, Jodie Benson, who
Ariel.
Yeah, and got in a lot of those people to come back, and then they had a lot of voice actors come in and do some of the characters where the original voice actors have passed away since then. But it's really cute. It's really sweet. If you like Disney animated movies, that's entirely worth watching. It's like, I don't know, less than 10 minutes long, but it's really quite nice. All right, that does it for news, and that just leaves us with our big question. And our big question this week is, we may have done this or a variation of this before, but who cares? It's still fun. It's spooky season, so what's your favorite spooky moment in a video game? So, Mario, why don't we start with you? What's your favorite spooky moment from a video game?
Yeah, when I was looking at this, the first thing that came to mind was playing Metroid Fusion as a kid. Those encounters with SAX, which is the X-parasite that's sort of resembling Samus. Those are like some very tense moments, some very scary moments, especially as a kid. The SAX model feels like really sinister as it's just like slowly walking and you're like in the vents and you can see below. That would be it for me.
All right, that's a good one. OJ, how about you?
So I'm thinking of classic. So Resident Evil 1, when you see the first zombie and they like turn around to look at you, that was really, really good. I mean, there's plenty of from the original Resident Evil. There's plenty of moments there, but like that was the first classic, really, I think, spooky thing I saw in a game.
Yeah, and it felt like really, actually kind of scary.
Yeah,
right. Like it felt different than what a lot of games prior to that had felt like, even when they were trying to do horror. All right, Alicia.
So I'm gonna go a little more recent. In the genocide route in Undertale, when you're going through New Home, Flowey pops up and like gives you his whole backstory of like how he got to be this way. And at one point he's like talking about, making the decision to go and kill everybody because you could just reset. It doesn't matter. But there's a part where he is like, because this is the genocide route, so you've been killing everyone. So he's like, you of all people must know how liberating it is to act this way. At least we're better than those sickos that stand around and watch it happen. Those pathetic people that want to see it but are too weak to do it themselves. I bet someone like that's watching right now, aren't they? And the first time I saw this, I was watching a Let's Play. And so, like, just that moment of being completely called out of like, oh crap! I had to stop. I had to be done with YouTube for the day.
Yeah, that's always weird, right? When the game sort of breaks the fourth wall.
And like, don't get me wrong, it was not the first fourth wall break I've seen, but it was the first one to really be like aggressive directly, not only calling out the player, but calling out the people who watch the player.
Right.
I was just like, I don't like this anymore.
Yeah, so I don't know. I tried to think about one for this, and I was trying to think like something that actually was kind of spooky. So I came up with two. One is the Friday the 13th game for the original NES, which isn't really that scary of a game, except that when you're first playing that game as a kid and you've rented it and you don't have the instruction manual, and my understanding is the instruction manual is really not that helpful even if you have it, but like Jason just shows up and murders you, and you like have no idea like why or how are you supposed to protect yourself or anything. Like once you know how that game works, it becomes infinitely easier to play that game. But like until you figure that out, and it's a lot of trial and error, that game just murders you over and over again. And so that was kind of, but I think something that's actually spookier, that actually was kind of creepy, was in Ocarina of Time, the wall masters, the hands that come out of the wall and grab you and pull you into the wall and kill you. Like the first time that happened in that game, like I didn't, this is prior to Twitch or anything. So like you didn't know what was in a game unless you saw pictures in a magazine. And I got that game at Christmas at launch. So like I knew nothing about the game other than it's a new Zelda and it looks cool. And when that happened, I was like, what the hell is going on in this game? Like this game took a real weird turn. And then I just remember being very nervous playing through that part of the game of like, trying to avoid that. Like, I do not want that to happen again. Because that game was actually I don't want to say it was easy, but it was very accessible, very, easy to like progress through. And when you got to that, you were like, oh, this is something way beyond me. So that worked on me at the time. All right, that does it for this week. If you're looking for something spooky to play, go check out one of those games that we just mentioned. You can have that experience. Hopefully we didn't blow it entirely for you. I think all those games have other additional spooky moments in them, right?
Yeah.
We're just telling you the first ones. I think with Christina, we talked about one of the later spooky moments in Resident Evil. So, but anyways, thank you, Alicia, Mario, and OJ for joining me as always. Thank you, those of you at home listening. You can check out more of our stuff and past episodes at salukigames.com. And we will be back soon with a new episode with no cannibal talk. Maybe. We can't really promise that.
I'll say it'll be even closer to Halloween. You never know.
Yeah. Well,
This one is still pretty close to being like mom and or Sandy friendly.
that's how we're going to put a stamp on them.
Certified Sandy friendly episode.
Somebody needs to go take a picture of her, and we'll just like cut it out and everything and slap it on there.
It's definitely not friendly to my mom because we talked about intelligent monkeys.
True. We're not saying it's friendly to all moms, just some moms. We can never guarantee that. We won't tell Sandy why we're taking her picture. Can you do a thumbs up for us? Yeah, why? No, nothing. Never mind.
You just put it in like the corner of the like the picture for the
the cover art for each episode. So then when it doesn't appear, you'll be really concerned.
Oh God, what's going to happen now?
Who knows? But anyways, thanks again for listening. We'll be back soon with a new episode.